Metal Gear Solid 5 is to video games what Colossal's are to movies. There's very few games that can claim this level of content and quality. Unlike most open worlds, it doesn't get stale after 5 minutes, not only because of the mission variety, but also because of the brisk pace at which you unlock new tools, weapons and even baddies. Its only glaring fault is the hours of downtime you're experienced during a playthrough. Still, the game is great for MGS fans and newcomers alike. Let's begin. Let me start with the story. Why? Because the game itself opens with an hour-long prologue, so I think it's fitting. MGS5 is huge and chronologically sandwiched between the first Metal Gear Solid games and the prequels. For this reason, it's probably the most confusing for newcomers, throwing future characters and already introduced ones at you from the beginning. It doesn't help that it's mangled at both the beginning and end. The former because of Ground Zero and the latter because of the infamous dispute between Kojima and Konami. The game is big enough already so it doesn't really feel unfinished, but the story just kind of ends. You reach a certain point in the plot, then some loose ends are tied and the game just goes, here's your big reveal bro. Not knowing past characters doesn't really hinder the game's plot, but it might leave some people confused. However, the game gives you plenty of cassette tapes to catch up on past events. Some of them are almost radio dramas.
See how you like this? We shall see indeed.
Kojima must have wrote the story after playing too much Katawa Shoujo, because the main theme is the titular phantom pain, both literal and metaphorical. Language also plays a strong part. I don't want to go through the whole plot, it has plenty of memorable moments, but suffices to say it will make you fight supernatural and conventional forces in a variety of environments. First Afghanistan, with its rocky cliffs and valleys and occasional sandstorms. I'm having flashbacks. Then Africa, sporting lush jungles, savannas and child soldiers. Then there's the FOB's missions, more on them later. You play as Venom Snake and you will have several missions to complete in these lands. The one thing that stands out is the sheer variety of freedom you have in completing the objectives. Both lethal and non-lethal, sneaky and loud are all valid ways to complete the mission. You can put everyone to sleep with tranquilizers, you can sneak up on soldiers and interrogate them, you can take care of vehicles with rocket launchers or with C4, you can disable bases communications, anti-air radars, power and so on. If you're in a pickle, you can call Pequod to give you an hand, or call an artillery strike. Maybe a tank will help you deal with armored vehicles. Or maybe you'll do your best to steal everything that's not bolted down. Yeah, with a Fulton device you can extract pretty much everything from the battlefield. Equipment and vehicles are mostly there to be sold, but personnel goes to your army. You can send people to Mother Base, brainwash them and have them join your forces as researchers, medics, intel team operatives or combat unit members. They'll even thank you when you beat them.
Thank you, boss. Boss, welcome home.
Childhood memories. Men and women of the combat unit can also be used instead of Snake during missions, but the waifu game of MGS5 is really weak.
Talk. Where are your friends?
I wish they could bring 2 secondary weapons to make up for their lack of bionic arms, but at least their perks can be useful. The enemies too will gear up more and more as the game progresses, from decoys to snipers to body armor, they'll improve as you do. Besides all the viable and meme options,
Where are your friends?
you can also bring a buddy with you on missions. First there's the horse, who is just a reliable, stealthy and maneuverable method of transportation. The dog, who can sniff people for you and hold, kill, stun or wound enemies. Quiet, a superhuman sniper who can scout, get enemies' attention and kill or tranquilize them from great distance. Lastly, there's the Walker. He's a bit underwhelming unless you spend a lot of time researching his upgrades. In general, the research, resource gathering and base management aspect of the game are a bit invasive but easily taken care of. They're mostly there to encourage you to play more of the game instead of rushing through the main story. Need a particular gunsmith? Maybe you'll have to replay a mission. Or maybe you'll do a side ops while aiming to capture more research and development suited personnel. At least it gives you something to do during downtime. Trust me, you'll beg to have something to do during downtime. The game offers you cassettes with information on characters, organizations and geopolitical events. Then there's 80s music to pass the time. You can even put speakers on helicopters. Look, here comes Pequod. Good thing you can add your own music. But this is a game where you'd ideally have a podcast or audiobook in the background.
The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone.
You tell them, Jesus.
Everyone who falls.
It was hard to know what to admire the most, their fluency or their artistry in lying. Gradually, I began to hate them.
Tell them, Hitler.
My wife and daughters, the ones you signed all those books for, they'd rather see me die on top of my white horse than watch me fall off. You can say that you want us to be vulnerable and real, but come on. You can't stand it.
Boarding and disembarking from the chopper alone will probably take hours of your total playtime. Beside the gargantuan amount of side ops, all the missions are really fun, especially boss fights. The supernatural ones in particular are great, some even have different ways to complete them. At some point the game also throws boss rematches and hardened old levels at you. And as I said before, the game ends kind of abruptly, but to be honest, it might have become too big for its own sake if it was otherwise. But yet I was beginning to feel burnt out. Maybe just a couple of extra missions to smooth out the pace and give a less arbitrary ending would have been perfect. So, any flaws beside the enormous amount of downtime? Well, some people might consider the base management an important fault, but I don't mind it that much. The control scheme is needlessly convoluted. Having several pieces of equipment tied to the same keys is not ideal. I like to spread them around more. There's no reason to force me to use the same key for all stances either. Oh, and you can set audio levels? This game did not come out before Doom. It has no reason to lack basic audio settings. There's also no hold option for any command. Stances, aiming and sprinting are all toggleable. While we're on aiming, that doesn't always work properly while taking cover. Metal Gear Online is dead. Multiplayer in general is handled awfully. The aforementioned FOB's mission look really interesting. They provide a unique set of challenges, enemies and equipment. You can even use Ocelot or Quiet for them. But unless you're just going to do inconsequential training missions, the only way to play is to go steal stuff and resources from another player. The system is pretty fleshed out. There's retaliation, security settings and alliances you can forge, but I despise the idea of having to inconvenience a random guy who just wanted to play single player. It's like an invasion in Dark Souls, except somebody might steal your stuff even when you're offline. It actually never happened to me, but 1, it was a possibility, and 2, you're required to spend lots of money for the security team, slowing down your research. Speaking of, I'm fine with having to find materials and specialists to unlock new weapons, but why do I need to spend real in-game hours for items to be available? We're not playing a browser game here, what is this? Fortunately, the game was long enough that I never felt like I had to waste time while waiting for research to be completed, but if you're trying to unlock most stuff, then that will be the case. One baffling problem is that somebody decided it would be a good idea to have credits at the beginning and end of each mission. The ending ones are fine, you can skip them, but the one at the beginning actually spoils some twists. Wow, I wonder if the skulls will make a surprise appearance. Oh, fuck! At least the to be continued are understandable. What isn't, it's an up next segment. Why are you spoiling the rest of the game? You don't need to convince me, I bought it already. I don't care whose decision it was, it's dumb. So, Metal Gear Solid 5. A great game in its own merits that was sabotaged by its publisher but still manages to be extremely enjoyable. It has a ton of content, most of it meaningful, a good story and some fun characters.
Forget Pax Americana. Say hello to Pax Hamburgana.
Its faults might be too much for some people who can stand their time being wasted, but all in all it's a great game. Technically the port runs great, and while I wish the options were less shallow, they don't really hinder the gameplay. If you don't own a console, this might be the better Metal Gear game to start with. That's all, thanks for watching, see ya! think I broke it.